I believe that this man may have been trying to quiet a guilty conscience. The lawyer. Now, why would I say that? I say that because at this time it was well known that Jesus was crossing cultural boundaries. He was breaking societal norms. He was doing things that other religious people wouldn't do. He was befriending people that other religious people wouldn't befriend. Drunks, prostitutes, Samaritans, other kinds of sinners. And in verse 29, we read that this guy, the lawyer, asked the question about who is my neighbor. Why? To justify himself. He wanted to justify himself. See, this religious man, in this context, in this setting, in this culture at this time, this religious man, probably, if I had to guess, I would bet no one ever questioned this man's character, not once. And what that would do to a person, if you don't have your character questioned like just Jesus' presence was now doing to this man, what happens is all of a sudden you don't see a need in your heart or in your life for the compassion of the Lord in your life. Because after all, hey, I've kept your law. I've done what I'm supposed to be doing. I checked all the boxes. I earned my spot in heaven. Hey, I am good. And I hate to say this, but guys, I think sometimes we're the lawyer. I think sometimes we're the lawyer. Just be honest with yourself. I have no idea what's going on in your heart. I have no idea what's God speaking in your heart right now. But I think that sometimes we think because, hey, I go to church, I pay my taxes, I don't kick my dog, I don't spit on the sidewalk. Hey, you know what? I'm a good person. God must be really pleased with me. The problem is when that is our standard of righteousness, when we think that puts us in a right standing with God, what tends to happen is we become self-righteous, right? And now it's very hard for us to look on other people and love them the way that we're supposed to. Oh yeah, love your neighbor, sure, but not them. You ain't calling me to love that person. He's not my neighbor. He's nothing like me. I'm a good person. That's a bad person. So let me ask you this morning, I want you to consider, who are those people in your life? I would imagine we all have them. Let me name a few groups of people that it might be. I'm going to step on some toes, which somebody did to me earlier today, stepped on my toes literally. But I'm going to name a few groups. Who is that group that you say, love your neighbor? Yeah, but not them. Is it Republicans? Democrats? Transgender people? Homosexuals? Adulterers? Thieves? Covetous? Drunkards? Revilers? Extortioners? And the list goes on. Felons? Is it any of those people? See, I think we all have that tendency, don't we? To point at those people, to say, yeah, love your neighbor. Absolutely, Lord, you bet. But not them. And I'll tell you what, the Jews during this time, they had a group of people like this. Didn't matter if the Jews were religious or not. They had a group of people like this. They all hated the same, and it was the Samaritans. They hated the Samaritan people, and the Samaritans returned the favor to them. They hated them as well. It's been said that the Jewish people, they prayed for the Samaritans, but they prayed they would not inherit eternal life. I think that was probably true. That's how deep-seated that hatred was. So when Jesus goes on to share this parable, you can imagine how shocking it would have been. Let's look at the parable he shares in verse 30. In answer to the question, who is my neighbor? Jesus replied, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down that road. And when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was. And when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii, right? Two days' wages, and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back. Which of these 3, Jesus says, which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among robbers? The lawyer said, the one who showed him mercy. And Jesus said to him, you, go and do likewise. So Jesus answers this man's question, which I love the way Jesus answers his question. He does it by telling a story. But what's interesting is he uses real places to tell this story. There really was a road that went from Jerusalem down to Jericho. I brought a map for those of you who like maps. There's Jerusalem on the left. You can see Jericho down there. This was a real road. And it was steep and it was dangerous. It was actually known as the Bloody Way. And the reason it was known as the Bloody Way, because peppered throughout those mountains and along that road were all kinds of caves where thieves and robbers and bad guys could hide in and jump out and attack unsuspecting travelers, beat them up, take their money, leave them for dead. And so Jesus tells a story about this man traveling down the Bloody Way. And as he does, he gets jumped. He gets beaten, he gets robbed, and he gets left for dead. And it just so happens 2 different religious leaders are walking down the road, and rather than stopping to help this guy, they go to the other side of the road, leaving this guy in his suffering. Now, I just want to take a minute here and talk. We talked about church hurt. You want to talk about church hurt? If anyone fits in that category, it's this guy, right? Here he is, probably in the most desperate situation of his life. He really just needs someone to give him a hand. And the 2 men who are supposed to best reflect the heart of God into the world instead harden their heart, blind their eyes, and rather than giving him compassion, they offer him indifference. And you know there were some religious leaders listening to Jesus tell this story. I wonder if their eyebrows raised at Jesus like, oh, really, Jesus? Where are you going with this? And it's at this point Jesus introduces the Samaritan into the story. And I can imagine at this point the people are probably on the edge of their seats like, all right, what is this wicked, evil Samaritan going to do? Is he going to walk by and kick him in the face? I bet it's going to be something like that. And I wish I could see the look on their face when Jesus reveals that the Samaritan is actually the hero of the story. Because he talks about how the Samaritan, he gets down off of his own animal, he takes care of the man, he puts him on his animal, he walks beside him all the way to the inn, stays the night with him, nurses him back to health as much as he can in that time, gives the owner, the hotel manager, more money than he actually was owed, and then says, hey, when I come back, I'm gonna make right whatever you spend in excess of what I've given you. And at this point, I would imagine that the lawyer's conscience, which he had been trying to quiet, was probably screaming at him. That guilty conscience he had, there in the presence of Jesus himself, the one who loves perfectly, the one who came to help people, came to sacrifice himself for others. There in the presence of Jesus, I would bet that this lawyer's conscience started screaming at him again. And it's at this point, Jesus doesn't let him off the hook. It's at this point says, which one of these 3 acted like a neighbor to him? The lawyer, nowhere to hide. The answer is clear. The answer is obvious. He has no choice. He says, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus said, that's it. He said, that is it. You go and do likewise. Jesus takes this man's question that was intended to trick him and trap him, and he turns it on its head, and he uses it as an opportunity to teach. The question isn't, who is my neighbor? The question is, what does it look like for me to be a neighbor to others? Jesus said that's the question that we should be asking ourselves. What does it look like for us to be a neighbor to others? It's a good question. And it's a question I think we should be asking ourselves as individuals, and it's a question I think we should be asking ourselves corporately as a church. What does it look like for us as a church to act as a neighbor to people? What does it look like for us as a church to take the position of a rear guard, making sure that none of God's people get left behind because we just couldn't be bothered? Well, I believe at this point, it would be very, very easy and the temptation's there, trust me, the temptation was there. It'd be very easy at this point to point to some concepts about what it means to be a good neighbor. And it would all be very clean, and it would be very sanitary. And there are times for that. There are places for that, but not this morning. Not this morning. This morning, I want to get really, really practical with you. I want to get messy with you. I'm going to be honest with you. When we care for people like this and God brings people like this into our lives, it's a mess. It is a mess. It's not nice and neat and clean and sanitary. That exists up here, not out here in reality. So what is it going to look like as we try to fulfill our position of the rear guard? Well, I think from this parable, we can extract three things that you can count on when we try to care well for people that God brings us in the position of this guy on the road. Let me give you the first one. Sometimes this work is kind of gross. That's just the reality. Sometimes this work is kind of gross and nasty, and it's not fun. This is what I mean. The Samaritan comes across this guy who's been beaten and bloodied and left for dead by the side of the road, completely unable to help himself. The Samaritan is on his own. He has to grab those bloody wounds and cleanse them and get his hands nasty and get his hands dirty in all of that blood and gore. Sometimes it's gross. And I want to tell you guys something. Sometimes by the time someone gets the courage or just the desire to step into a church, or sometimes by the time someone gets to a point where they're willing to have a spiritual conversation, chances are they've been beat up pretty good by the world and by the enemy. Spiritually speaking, they've probably been broken, bloodied, and beat, and they probably have emotional damage. They've got some wrong ideas about things, and they're not going to be a help to themselves. They're not going to be a help to us trying to help take care of them. And guess what that means? It's up to us well-taught saints who bear our standards among the rear guard to come alongside them and be willing to get our hands dirty. Sometimes it feels like we get our souls dirty, doesn't it? As you're dealing with broken and hurt people, sometimes as you hear their story, you just feel like I've been tainted by their story. Hey, that's what God calls us to, right? He cleanses us from that. But sometimes God's people, South Campus, we're going to have to get our hands dirty. We might feel like we're getting our souls dirty, sharing in their pain and their misery and the things that they've been through to help them walk through those things. As we help them cleanse those rooms, we're going to have to deal with bad tempers. We're going to have to deal with emotional instability. We're going to have to deal with wrong ideas. And during all this time, what we're doing is we're actually trying to heal the wounds by pouring on the healing oil of the gospel and pointing them to the great physician, the only one who can heal them, the only one who can put them in their right mind. But sometimes it's gross. Sometimes it's not fun. Sometimes it's nasty. But it's good work. It's good work. And while we're talking about this kind of gross work, let's not forget that this is exactly what Jesus has done for us. He came into this world. He looked and he saw that you were broken, bloodied, and beaten there by the side of the road, completely unable to help ourselves. And thank God, Jesus takes his standard. Jesus takes his place among the rear guard. Thank God for that, because you and I wouldn't be here if he didn't do that. And thank God he is willing to work with our bad tempers and our emotional instability and our wrong ideas. And thank God he begins to heal the wounds on our soul that sin has created, the wounds that are leading to death. And how does he do that? He pours on oil, right? Which reminds us of the Holy Spirit. He fills us with his Spirit, which teaches us, which cleanses us, which leads us through this life. He pours on the wine, which reminds us of his blood that cleanses us from our sins. See, this work that God has called us to, it's messy. I'm not going to lie to you this morning. It's not fun sometimes. But let's not forget where we came from, because that was us. We were there beside the road, broken, bloody, beaten by the enemy, by the world. And Jesus came and saved us and cleansed us. That's the first one. Here's the second one. This kind of work, honestly, it takes time. It takes effort. We see this clearly in the story, because what happens is the Samaritan comes across this man. He comes upon this man, and what does he do? He gets down off of his animal. He takes care of him. Then he lifts him up. He lifts him up, puts him on his animal while he stays beside him, and walks all the way to the inn. Then he spends that night with him, taking care of him. Chances are that guy had other plans for his night. Chances are that guy had other plans for his day rather than taking care of this guy. But it took time and it took effort. And I think one of the major blind spots in many churches today, or at least the ones that I know of, maybe not many, but some of the churches today, there's a lack of discipleship going on. There's a lack of discipleship going on between men and between women. A lot of churches are really good at getting people in the door. They're really good at getting decisions for Christ, as people raise their hand, maybe even baptizing people. But then a lot of times the people are just kind of left to themselves to just try to figure out how to walk through this world as a disciple. Like Spurgeon said, these wavering souls must not be left unaided. Every Timothy needs a Paul. Every Ruth needs a Naomi to walk with them, to point them. This is the way to the Lord. This is the way you should live, to do life with those people. And guess what? It's not always easy. People are messy. People are needy. It's hard work. But God has given you the time. He's given you the energy so that you can do the things that he's called you to do. Give the time and the effort. Oh, and by the way, while we're talking about time and effort, let's not forget that this is exactly what Jesus has done for us. It took time and effort to get here. There was a point in time where Jesus stepped down from eternity into time. And what did he do? It was as if, so to speak, Jesus steps down off of his animal. He became a son of man. Why? So that he could lift us up, so that we could become sons and daughters of God. And not only that, he doesn't leave us there. Then he promises to walk with us throughout the rest of our lives and on into eternity. See, does this kind of work take time and effort? Absolutely it does. But let's not forget what's been done for us, what is being done even at this moment for us. That's the second thing. Third thing we can extract from here, from this parable. With this kind of work, there's gonna be a cost. There's gonna be a cost. And I'm not necessarily talking about spiritually or physically, I'm talking about financially. Right? Let me just point to the parable where I see this. I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me. But not only does a man bandage the guy's wounds, he pours out oil and wine out of his own pocket, out of his own supplies, but then he pays the innkeeper to take care of this guy. And then he says, oh, and by the way, whatever you spend, I am going to give you that much more when I return. See, what doesn't get talked about a lot of times in church when we're talking about this kind of stuff is the cost. The financial cost it takes to disciple people, to walk with people, to shepherd people, to lead people. Gas to go pick people up when they need a ride somewhere. Take someone out for a meal so that you can sit and you can hear about the things that they're struggling with. Books, Bible studies, inviting them to events and paying for those things so that they can be there. And hey, these are not burdens, because James says that faith without works is dead. Right? If you see someone and they're in need of food, they're in need of clothing, and you say, hey, don't worry about it, brother. Be warmed, be filled. God will take care of all your needs. What good is that? It's no good. Because what that person fails to recognize is, yeah, God will meet their needs, but the way that he meets their needs is through people. It's through us, and they miss the joy, they miss the satisfaction of helping people. See, there's going to be a cost if we minister to the brokenhearted, if we minister to the broken people in our lives and the people that God brings here. And while we're talking about cost, right, clear, obvious, easy thing to see, the huge and incredible cost Jesus paid so that we could be saved. We read that he who was rich became poor so that we who are poor might become rich. And let me tell you the way that this works. This is a picture. Okay, this is a picture. I'm not saying this is how it works. This is how it works in my mind, but I think you're going to understand what I'm saying. Jesus walks through this world finding people on the side of the road who are broken, bloodied, beaten, bruised, left for dead by the world and by others. He gathers them up. He begins the healing process in their lives, much like the Samaritan. And then what does he do? He deposits them into our care. And he says, hey, I've given you what you need to take care of these people, and whatever it costs you above and beyond to take care of these people, when I return, I'm going to repay you. I'm going to reward you. There's so many scriptures in the Bible that talk about Jesus having that kind of language. My reward is with me. I'm coming quickly. Take care. You know, when we care for the poor, it's like we're caring for God. God sees these things. He rewards us. He gives us back much more than we could even think or imagine. So, those are the three things. How do we love our neighbors well? How do we take the position of the rear guard and make sure that no one who wants to be in the camp of the Lord gets left behind? Well, it starts by looking at Jesus and the Samaritan. It starts with compassion, and it starts with mercy. And it's a compassion that's birthed because we recognize you're me. You there beside the road, you're me. I was there and God rescued me. Whether it was literally or figuratively, that was me at some point. And if it wasn't me, if God's mercy hadn't saved me, I could be there and much, much worse off if God's mercy wasn't with me. That's where it starts. Someone very wise said these words, and I've been just contemplating them this week. I'm going to say them slowly so you can grab onto them. If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we would find in each enough sorrow and suffering to disarm all our hostility. Let me read that again. If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we would find in each enough sorrow and suffering to disarm all of our hostility. I think that is absolutely true. And guess what's incredible about that? We have a God who knows our secret histories. We have a God who knows the suffering and the sorrow that you've experienced, and this gives him the ability to have compassion on us. That's why he loves us. He knows our stories. He knows our struggles. He knows the things that we've been through. He knows the people that have hurt us. He knows the things that we've had to overcome. And it's these things, and many more, of course, because he's God, but gives him compassion for us. And he tells us, you guys go and do likewise. Go and do likewise. So, this work I believe that God has called us to here at the beginning of this year, we've got another message next week about how we don't just sit here and wait for those people to come, but we actually need to go out. We're going to talk about that next week. But this work that I believe that God has called South Campus to is to take the position of the rear guard, making sure that no one who wants to make it into the camp of the Lord gets left behind because we couldn't be bothered, because we didn't want to slow our pace, because we were on a mission, because we're saved and sorry about your luck. Now, is it messy? It is messy. But there's something about knowing, isn't there? There's something about knowing it's going to be messy. It's like, I hate messes. I like things neat and clean. But something about knowing there's going to be a mess, I can let my guard down a little bit. It's messy. Does it take time and effort? Absolutely. It's going to take time and effort. Is there going to be a cost involved? There will. If you're doing it right, there's going to be a cost. not only spiritually, not only personally, but probably financially. If you're doing discipleship and walking alongside people, right, there's going to be a cost involved. But it's worth it. And Jesus said when he returns, he will repay. All that you've spent over and above what I've given you to provide, if you took the talents I've given you and you increased them and doubled them, hey, big reward coming. If we believe Jesus is telling the truth, this is one of the ways we live like he's telling the truth. Wrapping our arms around people who are hurting and broken and slowing our pace, making sure that they get into the kingdom of the Lord. Let's pray.